Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well today. This time we are going to be talking about my 10 favorite or the 10 best shooters on the Super Nintendo. Quick reminder, these are all games that I have to own. That's one of the big requirements for making this list. So this is a port of the first Raiden arcade game. Traditional was shortened to Trad for some reason, so the official name of the game was Raiden Traditional, and then it got shortened to Raiden Trad. I guess marketing thought it sounded cooler. Either way, it's an extremely fun game. This is a vertically scrolling shooter, and it's similar to games like Capcom's 1942, or I believe Firehawk or Fireshark. Something like that. There's a Sega game that I can't remember the name of exactly, but it had fire in the name. Anyway, this thing is a little bit, or the Raiden series is a little bit like a vertical scrolling Gradius. You have one-hit deaths, and you have a series of power-ups that you collect along the way. This is actually my second favorite series of shooters, next to the Darius series. RType is a classic arcade shooting franchise. It mixes kind of body horror with science fiction, and that helps it stand out in some ways from the rest of the very crowded field of side-scrolling shooters. It's also an extremely difficult game. This is one where you definitely have to memorize the pattern in the levels in order to get by. It can be a major pain in the ass to go through. You do get a series of power-ups. You also have your little weapon ball that you have. And this is kind of a fun one that I keep forgetting about. You can charge your shot and then let out a big, massive attack on your enemies. I don't know why I keep forgetting about that. I guess with these games, my natural instinct is to just keep tapping the fire button until eventually everything's dead. Star Fox. This is one of those third-person perspective rail shooters. So you move through the levels, you're basically scrolled through them, but you try to fake 3D in some ways to, make the game look better. The big difference between Star Fox and other games like this are the graphics. Star Fox attempted to be 3D, or at least they did as much 3D as they could on the Super Nintendo. They also included the Super FX chip, which helped out quite a bit. This is not the version of Star Fox that I remember the most. I actually remember the N64 version more. And, well, neither really looks amazing today. At the time, they both looked really, really good. It's kind of hard to get that point across when you make modern comparisons with these games. So this was a fun game to play. It's one of the many games that I bought a while ago, tested it to see if it worked, and then set it on the shelf and forgot about it for a while. And then I revisited my shooters for this list, and yeah, I found that Earth Defense Force was a lot of fun. It's a pretty good shooter. It's not super amazing from a gameplay standpoint. It's a pretty standard side-scrolling shooter. With one big difference, you don't have one-hit deaths in this. You actually have 3 hit points, and you can collect some power-ups along the way in order to get up to 5. It's kind of a cool idea to have that, because a lot of other arcade shooters didn't do this. They would just have the one-hit deaths, and then you needed to kind of memorize where the bullets were going to go and that sort of thing. But with Earth Defense Force, you have a little bit more leeway with that. So this is actually my favorite game from the Gradius series. Gradius 3 is one of those games that I remember picking up in the late 90s. I don't exactly remember what got me into it. I want to say it was my friend Drew who told me about it, or I played it over at his house, but my memory's a little bit foggy on this one. It's a side-scrolling shooter that is set in space, but it's set in really cool space where you kind of dissolve into the next level and everything. So you'll be going along and all of a sudden there will be a desert or there'll be weird bubble stuff. And then when you defeat the big boss, all of that kind of just fades away, and then you go into like another space tube type thing. I find that really cool, and I don't know why. Anyway, like many other arcade ports, Gradius 3 has one-hit deaths and some level memorization you have to do. So this is like the third or fourth take that I'm doing this, so hopefully I don't screw it up like I have been. Anyway, this is one of Konami's run-and-gun shooters, and it is awesome. I really love this game. It was one of the games that I bought, didn't know a whole lot about, and then just I keep coming back to it and realizing how much fun it is. This is one of the games that probably would have been considered a hidden gem when the internet first got big and YouTube first got big. But now I think most people kind of know quite a bit about it. Think Contra, but set in the Wild West, and not as hard as Contra, but still the same, pretty solid controls and just fun gameplay. Phalanx is best known for its absolutely odd North American box art, which prominently displays an old man in a rocking chair with a banjo sitting next to his dog. At least I'm assuming it's his dog. If you look closely, you can also see a spaceship up in the corner, and that kind of lets you know that this is going to be a space shooter. I think. I have no idea. I remember being incredibly confused by this when I saw it when I was looking for retro games back in the late 90s, and then eventually picked it up because, I had $3, so I might as well take a shot on it. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's a really great space shooter, or a side-scrolling shooter, and yeah, it's pretty cool to play, even though it has weird box art. Biometal is another side-scrolling shooter. I know there are just so many of them. It's always rare when I see something on here and I'm like, oh, thank God I can say vertical scrolling or run and gun or something like that, or rail shooter. But hey, it's a side-scrolling space shooter. That is pretty great. It's not an easy game at all. It's pretty tough, but it does have this really cool mechanic where you can summon these little magical balls or metal balls that spin around you, and they act kind of like a shield. They've got their own power bar, which slowly goes down the more you use them, but it also recharges fairly quickly. You're doing the same thing in this that you do in a lot of arcade shooters. You're collecting power-ups, you're blowing up some kind of freaky-looking enemies. I really do like the enemies in this, and I like the graphics, just the way you have almost parallax scrolling going on. And yeah, it's a fast-paced game that is a ton of fun. This used to be my favorite, and then I played a few other ones that I'll get into. It has robotic fish enemies. I've said it before, I've said it again. Darius games are awesome because you get to fight robotic fish. I have no idea how many times I've talked about Darius Twin already, or even the Darius series. I really like Darius Twin an awful lot. This is another side-scrolling shooter that kind of suffers from some of the problems that other arcade shooters suffer from, especially when they're brought to the home console. But yeah, you face giant fish bosses. How could this not be awesome? It's one of those video game moments where you're just like, yeah, this game is great. I can't think of anything bad with it at all. I don't know why I was drawn to this series. I think it has to be that I just wanted to be different from my friends. Specifically my friend Drew, who really liked Gradius, or Gradius, however you want to pronounce it. And I just wanted to be different. And after playing Darius Twin, I just started collecting the other Darius games. However, I still return to this one because it really is my favorite of the series, and it was my favorite SNES shooter until I got to Area 88. Area 88 is so cool. I love this game. Mostly because I just fell in love with all of the other stuff that goes on in this whole like little media environment that they've created for it. Started off as a manga, became an anime, and then eventually became a couple of video games, as I was informed of in my review of this. I really was digging this when I got it. You actually have a life bar. There's a shop in it, so you can buy different weapons, you can buy different ships, you can buy different planes, because this one is a little bit more grounded in reality than some of the other games that we've looked at, even though you do end up fighting giant planes or giant tanks, so reality as far as video games are willing to allow it to go. It really became one of my favorites, or became my favorite shooter on the SNES. So, final thoughts on all of those. There are so many more shooters on the SNES that I just didn't get a chance to either play for this, or I don't own copies of, or I thought I owned a copy of it and went to find it and it was just gone. One of the downsides of moving around a lot and just, life in general. Some of the others that I thought about adding on this list that didn't make it include Contra Alien Wars, Axelay, Super Mega Force, Aero Fighters, RType 3, Blazon, Imperium, Thunder Spirits, 100%, or Cotton 100%, Macross, Scramble Valkyries, and I also thought about including Wolfenstein and Doom on here, because, well, they're not what you think of when you think of shooters. You think of those two as more of first-person shooters. They kind of fit into the genre. The whole shooter genre is just bizarre, because you have shoot-'em-ups, then you have first-person shooters, and then you have like flight sims, which can be considered shooters as well, and it gets very confusing. Then you have the run and gun stuff, which like Metal Slug, Contra, that sort of thing, which I consider to be in the same ballpark, but it's a whole big confusing genre. Not the most confusing, but it's a pretty confusing genre. Anyway, that's going to wrap things up. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.